Hello, everybody. Next week, you guys will all be taking what's called the SBAC math test. You'll also be doing one in reading and writing as well, but we're going to focus on math. So today, what I wanted to do is show you what this is going to look like and talk a little bit about what the questions are going to be like and some strategies for doing your best on this test. So before I even get started, I want to let you know not to stress about this test. The biggest thing about this test is letting me know what have I taught you well this year and what do I need to work on? How can I improve as a teacher when I'm giving instruction in math? So don't stress about it. Just do your best so I can get good information and feedback for myself as a teacher. Okay? So when you log into SBAC next week when you're taking your test, you're going to start by seeing a screen that looks similar like this, where it asks you to pick some settings and to review them. You are not going to change any of these settings. You are not going to turn on text to speech. You are not going to fiddle with any visual assistance tools or your color contrast or anything like that. You are going to leave them all as they are. So what you will do is you'll just say select and you're going to move on. It is then going to ask you to do an audio video check, and they will ask you to push the play button. Now, I've already done this so that you don't have to listen to it. My sound and video is working, so I will click I could play the video and sound. Okay, then I click continue. You will get instructions at the beginning. Please read through them. Okay, it's going to ask you to review your test settings and raise your hand if you have any question about them. Remember, we're not changing any test settings unless I tell you in class otherwise, so don't mess with that. Additional test information. So this is going to just give you a little bit of extra information. When you're ready to start the test, when you're in class, and I say go ahead and start, you will click the Begin Test Now button. While you're taking the test, keep some things in mind. If you need help with how to answer a question during the test, you can look at a tutorial that is in the menu for each item. Okay, you do have to answer every single question on the screen before going on to the next page. You have to make an answer. Okay, if you're not sure, give your best guess. There is no penalty for guessing. That being said, do not just spend your whole time guessing, because that's not going to give me very good information. Okay? If you want to look back at an answer later, maybe you're not sure if you got it right and you'd like to go back later, you can do what's called marking the item for review. So I'll show you that when we get into the sample test, what you can do. And some of you may like that option of like, I'll go back to that later because I can't think of how to solve that right now. At any time, you can pause the test by clicking the pause button rather than the next button after answering an item. Please don't do that unless I've asked you to, and that would only really be in the case of an emergency. Okay, you will need to raise your hand if you need a break for some reason, and I will come over and tell you to click pause. Okay. Your answers need to be your own work. You're going to keep your eyes on your own test. There is no talking during the test, and I am also going to be giving you some scrap paper that you can work with. Okay? So we will click Begin Test Now so you can see some of the types of questions that you're going to see on the SBAC. Now, there are two different parts to the math SBAC. There's the part that looks like this, where you have multiple choice questions, where you get 4 choices and you're just going to click. And then there's another section that is called the performance task, where you're going to actually have to show all your math. So you remember how all year long I've been saying, show your work, show your work, show your work? This is why, because you can't just write an answer or pick an answer. On this other part, which I'm not going to show you today, on the performance task, you're going to show all your work out. It's going to be more like an application problem where you get a word problem and questions and you have to solve and show your answer. So let's take a look at our first sample question. It says, which equation has the same unknown value as 30 divided by something equals 6? Now, some of you may be very confused by that wording. So look at your choices of your answers and think about what it's really asking you. In other words, it says which equation, which number sentence has the same unknown value. So basically, they want to know which other number sentence is going to match this, where the box is going to be the same number. So 30 divided by what equals 6 is similar to what problem here. Okay, so look at all your choices. The first one says 6 times 30. Is 6 times 30 the same thing as 30 divided by something equals 6? That's not. So I'm going to imagine in my head, I'm crossing that off as a choice. I know that doesn't make sense. I may not know if the other ones are correct, but I know this one is not. Now I'm going to look at the next one. 6 divided by 30. Now, whether you're a third grader or a fourth grader, have we done a single digit number divided by a two-digit number at all this year? And if you're thinking, no way, then chances are that's not correct either. If we take 6 and divide it into 30, you're going to get some really weird answers. That's not the possible choice either. Now we have 2 left. This is when you have to just try to think about, okay, which one makes more sense? 6 times something equals 30? Well, that's a little confusing because right here it says it's a division problem, right? And then it says 6 divided by something equals 30. Well, guys, do you know any number sentence where you can take 6, divide it by a number, and get something larger than 6? No. So we are not going to use that choice, which means the only one we are left with is option C. So we're going to actually select, option C by clicking on the C. And we know that's right because 6 times 5 is 30, and therefore 30 divided by 5 equals 6. This is one of our fact families, right? Right? Once you've selected your answer, you are going to click the next button up here on the left. Do you guys see this up here? I'm going to get my pen up here. Right up here is the next button. So I was looking way down here for a minute and there's no next button or enter button. It's up here on the top left. Now we have some other tools up here. We have a line reader so that it highlights. You don't need to play around with that. If you really need to zoom in, you can, and you can zoom out. This little button right here will give you a tutorial. You can also use a notepad if needed, but I'm going to give you scrap paper. I wouldn't suggest using the notepad for your math. And if you want to be able to strike through something, it looks like maybe you can, but I'm not quite sure how that works. So we're not going to worry about that. If you weren't sure about this question and you want to come back to it later, you can click this little flag where it says mark for review. That will give you a little flag right here. And later on, when you think you're done with the test, it'll say, hey, you marked these questions for review. Do you want to go back and take another look at it? So unlike the diagnostic that you took for iReady this year, you can go back to a previous question and make some changes if you'd like to. Okay, so I'm going to click the next button. I'm going to clear my screen here. And we're going to look at question number 2. If you see your screen do this, where you can't really quite tell what's the rest of it, you can scroll down. So just know that you've got a bar on the right where you can scroll. Here we go. We have a question. What unknown number makes this equation true? All right, so basically they're asking us to solve 6 times 8. You all know how to do 6 times 8. If you need to, you can use your scrap paper. What we see here is just for entering your numbers. It is not a calculator. It will not do the math for you. So on your scrap paper, I would expect, especially third graders, to be writing this out and maybe thinking about using your distributive property. Fourth graders, I hope you know this fact. You can also do some skip counting if you need to, but please, please, please work it out on your paper. Now, I know 6 times 8 is 48, so I'm going to type 48 into my calculator or into this number pad here, 48, and I will click next. This button right here, just so you know, is for a fraction. So that's going to be important for specifically fourth graders, but I think third graders, you're going to use that too. This is how to be able to write a fraction. So you can put your numerator and your denominator and create a fraction. Now, we don't need that for this problem. I just wanted to show you that tool. So we know 6 times 8 is 48. I'm going to double check my work. Does that make sense? I'm just going to look up here. This time I have the tutorial, mark, review, and notepad as my options. I don't want to mark this for review. I'm good. Click next. Number 3, decide whether each expression, the word expression, guys, just means like a number sentence, is equal to 4 times 12. Select yes or no for each expression. So this one has 3 different questions. They want to know which of these is equal to 4 times 12. Now, we talked about this briefly, third grade. Fourth graders, I don't know if we touched on it this year again or not, but I know I taught you last year. When you see parentheses, those parentheses mean do this part first. So we're going to solve the part in the parentheses first. And again, I strongly suggest you write these down on your paper. So I would do 10 plus 2 is 12. And then I end up with 4 times 12. Is that equal to 4 times 12? It is. So I'm going to click yes. Do you notice how I didn't have to actually solve 4 times 12? I just had to see if the expression equals 4 times 12. 4 times 10 times 2. Well, if I do 4 times 10 first, I get 40 plus 2. 42. So I'm going to have to maybe this time actually solve 4 times 12 just to be sure. All right? So 4 times 12. You can do this in lots of ways, but I know 10 times 4 is 40, 2 times 4 is 8, so I know 4 12s is 48. If 40 plus 2 is 42, I know this is an incorrect expression. Now my last one is 4 plus 10 times 2. Well, I know 10 times 2 is 20, and 4 plus 20 is 24. Again, that's not 42, so I'm going to select no. Notice how I'm going one step at a time. I'm going slow, guys. Take your time. Click the next button, and you move on to your next question. Caden has 7 bags of animal toys. Each bag has these animal toys in it. 1 whale toy, 5 dolphin toys, 2 turtle toys. How many animal toys does Caden have all together? You're going to select all the equations that show how you could find the total number T of animal toys. Now remember, we can use a letter to represent just our answer, right? So how would we find out how many animal toys Caden has? Well, we would just add all of our numbers, right? We'd add 1 plus 5 plus 2. So does 7 times 8 make sense? Absolutely not. That doesn't even make any sense. We're adding here. 7. I'm going to rethink that. I went back up and I saw Caden has 7 bags of animal toys. Each bag has these in it. So even I went too fast. I have to imagine what's happening. Here's my 7 bags. I like to draw a picture. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Each bag has these toys in it. So each bag has 8 toys in it. So now I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I think this might be a multiplication sentence. Because if each bag has 8 toys in it and there are 7 bags, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Each bag has 8 toys. I think the first one would actually make sense. 7 times 8. That would work. So notice I recognized as I looked at my possible answers that I was interpreting the problem wrong because I did not read carefully. You have to read carefully and slow down. I just showed you it's very easy to skip something and miss something, right? So would 7 plus 1 plus 5 plus 2 get me the same thing? It wouldn't. I'm not adding 7, 1, 5, and 2 because there are 7 bags with these in it. So this is not an option right here. This one's not. All right, the other one says 7 times 1 plus 5 plus 2. That makes sense because I have to add my whale, dolphin, and turtle toys first, then I can multiply them by 7. So that one makes sense. And the last one is 7 plus 1 times 5 times 2. Well, I'm not multiplying these numbers. I'm adding them and I'm multiplying them by 7. So I've selected the 2 equations that I think are the correct ones. Remember, if you see something that says select all, you may need to click more than one. So don't rush so fast that you just click one. Okay? All right, part of a multiplication table is shown. What 2 numbers correctly complete the pattern in the table? In this one, you're going to type some numbers, and you have to think about the pattern you're seeing. Well, I see 12, 15, 18, 21. That seems to me like I'm counting by 3s. 16 something, 24, 28. I think that might be counting by 4s, but let me check. To go from 24 to 28, is that adding 4? It is. So if I have 16 and I add 4, I get 20. If I take 20 and add 4, does it make 24? It does. So check, not only over here, but over here as well. Now I think the next one might be counting by 5s, but I'm going to check 20, something, 30, and 35. Well, from 30 to 35 is definitely a 5 jump. And so I think this is 25, and I'm going to check and see if it sounds right. 20, 25, 30, 35. It sure does. So I'm going to click next. Here we have a 2-part problem. You're going to need to pay attention to that. It says Nikki is comparing fractions. We've all done this, guys. She states 2/3 is greater than 2/4 because each 1/3 piece is larger than each 1/4 piece. Click on the fraction bars to show 2/3 and 2/4. There's part A. So I'm going to click on the fraction bars to show 2/3. There's my 2/3. I'm shading them. And here's my 2/4. I'm shading them. I've done part A. Now part B says, is Nikki correct? Yes or no? So I'm going to go back to the beginning. Nikki said 2/3 is greater than 2/4. I'm looking. Is 2/3 greater than 2/4? She is right. And now, this is why I said, 3rd graders, that you need to know which symbol is which. Which one is the greater than symbol? It's this one. 2/3 is greater than 2/4. I click the next button. Okay. On this one, it asks you to add the arrow tool to draw all the lines of symmetry. So here you see a little toolbar and it says add an arrow. So we're going to use that. A lot of you may be looking at this word symmetry and going, I don't know what that means. If you don't know what something means, make your best guess. So I'm going to click add arrow and it says select 2 points to connect with the double arrow. So if I click here and here, it's going to make my arrow like that. If I don't want that anymore, maybe I made a mistake, I can click delete. And it will delete whatever you've clicked on, okay? I'm going to add an arrow again, and I'm going to tell you that symmetry means if you were to fold along that line, both halves of the sides would be the same. So if I put here and here, do you see how if I fold it along that line, both of my parts are the same shape? It's just sort of mirrored, reversed. See how that's 1 and 1 like this? Okay. This would not be a line of symmetry because this part is smaller than this part. It's almost like think of cutting it in half in all the different ways that you can split it in half. Okay. So I've added my arrow. I'm going to click next. And it tells you when you're finished. It says you have answered all questions in the test. When you finish checking your answers, click the End Test button. So I'm going to go, okay. Now it says, please submit the test when you have finished testing. Okay. You will need to go back up here to end your test. Before you do that, remember how we flagged our question? If you click on items up here, it says you have marked questions. Review these before submitting your test. So you can go back and you can see, hey, I couldn't remember how to do number 1, or I wasn't sure. I'm going to go back to question number 1 and check my work. You can then change your answer if you think you want to. Once you've done that and you've decided, okay, all the ones I had flagged before, I am happy with now, then you may click your End Test button. It will check and say, are you really sure? And you will click Yes to end your test. Okay? It will tell you here as well, here are some questions that you can review. I've already done that, so I'm going to go ahead and submit my test. I'm going to click Yes, and I am done, and I will let Mrs. Davis know and click Log Out. Okay? So this is what we're going to be doing next week. You will be taking a practice test like this tomorrow if you are a 3rd grader, and on Thursday, nope, I'm sorry, that's backwards. Tomorrow, if you are a 4th grader, you'll take the practice test, and Thursday, you will take the practice test if you are a 3rd grader. Okay?